Alright everyone, it's time for the Occult video 226. The Occult must oppose censorship. A little bit of a meandering again into sort of a sociopolitics fused with magic. If you look at the tradition of occultism, and I mean occultism in the strictest sense, you know, we're talking about everything from the sort of Hermetic era up through Theosophy and so forth into the modern age. One thing is clear, and this is the case in ancient texts as well. There's a search for truth. There's a search for power, a search for some spiritual virtue, or into spiritual forces, cosmic shit, spirits, what are they? Do ghosts really exist? How do we explain this paranormal phenomenon? It's questions. In proper occultism, you're not simply sitting there. I've always thought it was weird when people join like an occult school and they're like, I read this book, I absorb its knowledge, and then I'm a mage, or I'm a high grand poobah wizard or something. And it's like, well, you know, you're not questioning anything. You're just taking for granted what other people have supposedly encountered. You're overlapping it onto your own life and expecting to derive some fulfillment for that. I've always thought that was a pretty weird way of looking at things, and I've always looked at the spiritual, insofar as I have spiritual beliefs at all, which is, you know, hit or miss. Some concepts I believe are absolutely false. Some concepts I believe are true. Yeah, there are aliens. It's not really an occult concept. Extraterrestrial life would be biological just like we are, but I believe in it. I believe it exists. Meanwhile, no, I don't believe in the Loch Ness Monster. I understand that's more of just the superstition and paranormal side, but that's just my beliefs. It's what I've arrived at. But if I read somebody else's book on the subject, they might say, well, here's 10 reasons I don't believe in extraterrestrials. Oh, well, I've got to absorb this and call it knowledge, call it spiritual truth. Censorship seeks to restrict information. Literally, to control someone's mind, all you have to do is restrict what they're privy to as far as info. That's why governments are secretive. That's why governments have surveillance apparatuses and spies and shit like that. They try to pry into the information of the enemy, or perceived or real, and shield their own information. That's basically what war is all about. It's about knowledge more than brute force. It doesn't matter how well equipped and large your military is, in some cases it's still going to lose if you don't have good reconnaissance. If you don't know what the fuck is going on, you're going off into the wilderness, you don't know anything about the terrain, you don't know who you're up against. A small group of partisans slowly picks off your forces, demoralizes them to the point where they just wander off into the jungle forlorn and dying. That's essentially, you know, it's how you would govern. You have to have information. You have to know what's going on. Information gathering is important. Censorship prevents that from happening. So in the occult, when you're giving a divine or a spiritual importance to gathering information, to experimenting, opening yourself up to new avenues of thought or whatever, whether you're a psychonaut or a theosophist or you're into Hinduism or whatever, you're putting yourself into a trance to try to reach out to the spirits. You're some tinfoil hat wearer. You're trying to contact the mothership. It doesn't really matter. You can't do that under a heavily censored system. Now, one problem in the war against censorship has always been that not everyone is being censored. Some people's beliefs are perfectly tolerated. They don't see a problem all of the time, unless they have a strong principle against the concept. This is my case. I simply am principled against the idea of censorship. I think it's spiritually wrong. I think, as far as the Western world goes, it is politically an aberrance. It's a cancer. I think that it's, at least subjectively, what you would consider evil. I think censorship is evil. I think the idea of preventing people from proper truth, from putting out information, from absorbing information that they wish, breaches the concept of the pursuit of happiness. I simply think that as far as the philosophical foundation of all Western civilization goes, censorship should be considered one of the worst crimes. We should probably, look askance at people that suggest that we need it. We should probably put them on a funny farm or something like that. I think that it's crazy. I think that it's horrible. So if you give it a spiritual truth, if you think that the search for truth, the obtaining of wisdom and knowledge and stuff has an importance beyond simply the politically pragmatic, all that much more you have to believe in, censorship being a bad thing. Now, you can situationally say, well, this example of censorship is okay. I don't, but some people will find little ethical reasons why. Like, think of the children is usually the big one. Well, yeah, I mean, if you care about the next generation, you want them to be informed, right? You want them to know the truth. The truth is that the world has problems and shit like that, and trying to shield them from it by saying, well, you're not allowed to post war footage on the internet anymore, so, little Jimmy doesn't understand just how fucking grotesque it is until he's already signed up for the armed forces. I think that you're doing little Jimmy a disservice. I think that if you believe in a God, and I'm apatheistic and I'm like, well, I don't care about this issue. If you believe in a God or gods or whatever, certainly you can't possibly reconcile that with the belief that you should spread lies or prevent the truth from being spread. I can't see any logically consistent reason why that would be. Now, of course, people who are fundamentalists, of course, they forsake logic in favor of doctrine and dogma. But increasingly, I'm seeing less and less fundamentalism and far more of the questioning side, the more rational side, especially of Christianity lately, which I think is a good thing. Not the liberalization of it. Some of these people are still fire and brimstone, but they're able to formulate things logically. I'm seeing less people that are saying, because a book told me so, the world's 6,000 years old. Let's put it that way. By the way, more common than you would think 20 years ago. There were people that believed that sort of stuff. And I don't mean in rural Alabama, in some one-horse town. I mean, like, you know, supposedly mainline Christians. Very interesting. The occult, in my opinion, must of necessity, by its philosophical basis, oppose all forms of censorship. State censorship, corporate, whatever it happens to be. It's simply not consistent with the spirit of the search for truth, experimentations into the spiritual, and so forth. Things like that, things of that nature. It's not consistent. Now, of course, one thing is that if an occultist disagrees, they have to be allowed to speak to it and say, no, I'm fine with it. I think here are 3 reasons why the occult should embrace censorship. And there are some, like, you know, especially tied in with certain ethno-nationalist offshoots, there are certain groups within magic or within the occult, certainly within religion, that believe in censoring ideas. I'm talking about the occult as a more pure philosophy. I'm not talking about religion with this. I understand organized religion of necessity attempts to control information flow because it seeks to maintain its power. Totally different ideas. That's about all. Peace out.